So continuing on our trip across the nation to talk about COVID-19 and how it's affecting the fish and game departments, the warden services. So we're here with Maine with Cpl John MacDonald, and he's a public information officer for the Maine Warden Service. And thanks for joining us, John. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Great to have you on, John.
Yeah, and we've talked to the Washington State. We were able to talk to Steve Baer, who's the colonel out there, and now you. And we've talked to the PIO, the public information officer, for everybody that's listening, if I say that again, in Ohio as well. So we're kind of one end to the other and in the middle. And just to give everybody a heads up to check out, if you're going to recreate in the outdoors, if you're going to hunt, you're going to fish, just check out what your state's doing. And if you're going to travel, check out if that state's even allowing you to travel into it and stuff. So just bringing awareness of what's going on with the warden services across the nation. And we had Randy Stark. We're going to wrap it up with him later in this. But there's a lot going on in Maine, isn't there, John? And a lot of different changes. Some I think are really positive, actually. I think to try to get people outside and, you know, try to help get through this whole mess. So, but if you want to start with it, that would be great.
Yeah, no, thank you again, Wayne, very much for having us on. Yeah, we've been impacted as everyone else has been across the country. Probably the wave of it crossing the nation. Maybe we were one of the last ones to kind of get things going, but I'm not sure how, you know, that all took place. But we are certainly under the effects of it now here in Maine, and you know, we've got 700 or 800 confirmed cases and around 20 deaths here in the state too. So yeah, that's significant, obviously. But right out of the gate, yeah, the governor and our commissioner was quite proactive with knowing that people were going to be not working, or at least some people weren't going to be working, and we were encouraging social distancing even a couple of months ago. So that was giving a lot of pointing, you know, to the direction of the outdoors for a lot of people. Was okay, we can't go to the malls, we can't go to the restaurants, we can't do this and that. And being in the state we're in,
flood the woods.
Yeah, the initial push was get out and at least get some exercise. So, you know, right out of the gate, the need to renew a fishing license had been extended till April 30th. So you don't need a fishing license currently unless you've been, you know, revoked or whatnot. Or if you need a special commercial license for things, you still need those. But for the, you know, recreational fisherman that wants to go out there, men and women, kids, you know, 16 don't need a fishing license, nor do you need to register your boat until at least April 30th.
Wow.
So those that had not registered a boat for this year to use, or I think our registrations actually expired June 1st from last year. So some people may not need to register them anyway if they had them registered after July of last year. But with that said, if you're in the situation where you needed to register your boat or it was unregistered, you don't need to until April 30th. We don't see that extending again, but things are changing so that it might for some reason. So that's, you know, one of the quick things that took place for.
Just one of my questions that comes to mind, John, is non-residents. Is that the same for residents and non-residents? Or
I believe so. I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. I believe that to be the case.
Some states are differentiating residents versus non-residents. So, and
if that is the case,
one of the things we've got out here, John, in the Northwest is most states, and I'm in the state of Montana now, you know, recently retired from California, is non-resident hunting is just shut down.
Yeah.
You know, on every level. And they're actually talking about in some states of doing, for residents, we only can hunt our counties, especially in the more rural states like Montana, Idaho, et cetera, Wyoming, because the big population centers, people are coming back to from summer homes, from out of state, and they're just starting the whole COVID cycle over again. You know, that's a controversial management tool on the part of our agencies out here in the Northwest. And like Wayne mentioned, curious if you guys have had any of that, and if that's going to be an issue in Maine.
Well, we haven't discussed that, at least what I'm aware of yet, to
Gotcha.
Either hunt in the wildlife management district in which you live. I haven't heard that discussed, but we have turkey hunting coming up next month. So there's been some discussions around turkey hunting and registering them or not during this time. But if it had been fall, maybe we would be talking about that. Just hunting within the wildlife management that you live. But
Sure.
for now, no, not that I'm aware of here in Maine.
Yeah, that would be tough. We the same thing, John. We're in
hard.
New Hampshire. We're doing the exact same thing. We haven't diversified between residents and non-residents. So they're putting out that if maybe did day trip and not go to your hunting camp or whatever, but it's only an advisement. It's not a rule. So, and if I had to turkey hunt where I live, boy, I probably wouldn't get a turkey.
that would be pretty slim pickings, right?
It would be.
Well, we've got the spring black bear season opens today actually out here in Montana, and this is a hot spot, in northwestern Montana, where people from all over the country that are hardcore bear hunters are not traveling now, and they are very, obviously they're concerned, and we have one of those. We're going to hold this till the 24th of April, see how it goes, and maybe we can have non-residents come in at that point, but realistically, with what we're seeing on the COVID cycle, I don't see it happening. And that's the first time in history. And it's what we're all dealing with on the wildlife officer front, right, guys? It's just it's a tough place to be in, but something we have to do in some ways.
Yeah.
But what I think is cool is the whole license thing, John, that you're not requiring a license, because we always talk about before this recruitment and retainment. What an opportunity for somebody who hasn't picked up a fishing pole in a few years
to
grab that and go out and wing it and get that bug back or try something that you've never tried before. I don't know how many requests I've had texts as me. I was like, can we do what Maine did? And I'm like, yeah, I think for recruitment and retention, I think it's a cool opportunity. So making lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah, we're not really sure how many, people will take that advantage and go do that. We're actually seeing, we just talked with our license director this morning, that licenses really haven't been impacted noticeably yet. People are still buying their licenses even though they don't need them. But
cool.
We may see, if it extends, we may see some changes there. But yeah, hopefully it does add to some of the recruitment of new interest.
Yeah, no doubt. So, but you have closed some of your regional offices and things like that, haven't you?
Yeah, all of them are closed to the public. So that has changed the way we do business a lot. And I think every state is becoming, by the end of this, we're going to be pretty good at Zoom and Microsoft. We have a weekly, staff meeting, all staff meeting with our commissioner, and there's 140 to 160 people on there.
Wow.
And so we're going to learn a lot, as individuals and professionally from this, probably that will extend out a long time, hopefully so in some cases. But obviously the bad things about COVID-19 are horrible, but there will be some good coming out of this. I
agree on your point, John, on and when I talk about this a lot is let's make some lemonade out of these lemons, right? And let's look at the positives. Unfortunately, we have the technology to do automated license sales where we don't have to have face-to-face contact, can still keep people in the woods. And from a recruitment and retention standpoint that we're kind of looking at on the positive light of this whole COVID thing is people are so stir crazy in their houses when they used to sit on a shoreline and get bored because they weren't catching that fish fast enough and give up on the sport, which I saw my whole career in California. And now they're like, I'll do anything to sit on a shoreline all day and not catch anything just so I can breathe some fresh air and get out of the house. And it's such a great recruitment and retention for an awareness of what we all are on love and conservation. So kind of good to see. And I'm glad we have the technology now because 10, 20 years ago, we'd be in a world of hurt, wouldn't we? With everything would shut down. We just could not continue to recruit, to promote, to facilitate anything. So it could be a lot worse. And I'm glad we're looking at it that way and trying to make a little bit of positives out of it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. What would people expect, John, for like if a phishing check are wardens checking differently now? So if you were fishing on the stream and you were approached by a warden, is there a change there?
Oh yeah, yeah. We are very strictly adhering to the social distancing here. Even access to our regional offices for game wardens or other staff. The process of entering a particular door and washing your hands, and so even with our own staff, the interaction there is much different. Obviously, we're not riding together as employees in one truck. So when we encounter people out in the field, which we really not a lot's changed in terms of response for us. But some of the proactive things, getting, when you check a fishing license, you're obviously getting quite close to someone and inspecting their license and all that. So those things have to be modified a little bit, especially in circumstances where you might suspect that someone may not have a license. But but we are still enforcing the law and have had to make some of those enforcement actions recently.
Sure.
Search and rescue, just with what we've talked about with the people out in the woods more than they typically would be this time of year, we have been experiencing some searches for people who may not otherwise have been out in the woods this time of year. And we just had a couple overdue canoeists on the Kennebec that may or may not have been there last year this time if they didn't have these restrictions. I live adjacent to a state park, and I've had 3 groups of people come out into my backyard who were lost that said, where the heck are we? And that happens in the summertime sometimes, but not in April. Or late.
Right. Yeah.
And it's still winter in the woods up here. I mean, you go north, we still get a lot of snow in the woods, and people need to be prepared for that type of. It looks great on the roadside, but you get off the beaten path, as you know, there's a foot or 2 foot of snow out there that you get wallowed and wet and miserable really quick if you're not prepared.
Yeah, especially this part of the spring. We're the same way like you guys in the Northeast. The Northwest is. I can get to about 3,000 feet, and then I'm in 2-3 feet of snow. And I mean, bear season's today, and access is going to be tough. Guys are going to be getting stuck. The residents are kind of happy that they're going to have the woods to themselves, but it's going to be a little tough out there, if you do get stuck. John, a quick question on, from the standpoint of your officers, one thing we're experiencing in like California and other states up here in the Northwest is we just can't have our groups together for perishable skills training, firearms, defensive tactics, officer safety tactics. Yeah. That's getting thinner and thinner and smaller to where on the special operations front from my old team, the training just isn't happening. And just curious, how are you guys dealing with that in Maine, and how's it looking on your training front for your guys?
Well, we actually haven't, as far as firearms training, we're quickly approaching the time we qualify a couple of times a year. One's generally in the late spring, I guess, May, June, May, I think it is. And then we often do it in December. So we're usually trudging around in the snow or the mud, but that next one's coming up soon. And I don't quite know yet what's going to take place. We have some facilities that are quite modern where you can quite easily keep your distance and people can qualify and do those types of things. But then on some parts of our state, we're using, Rod and Gun Club gravel pits or whatever it is. So it isn't like we have these facilities with indoor shooting with ventilation and all that stuff. That we're
private lanes and
no, we don't have that.
Yeah.
So I don't have an answer for that right at the moment, but I think we're going to have to answer that question within a month or so.
Yeah.
Training specific things, yeah.
I did see one of your notes too, John. You've put most of your vehicles back to high visibility. I'm sure that Maine Warden Service magnets are back on there and things of such. So just to give people comfort because we're in the back roads, we're out there, and I'm sure that helps a lot.
Right. Yeah, we have a fair amount of unmarked vehicles, and we've made a change to make them high visibility. or higher visibility, just for the awareness, and if people need us or whatever, they quickly identify with us to be able to flag us down or whatever it might be.
Sure.
Yep. No, I noticed that. That's a
John,
great change.
John, are you guys getting roped into a lot of just health and human safety response, whether it's, delivering supplies or, first responder type duties that we all seem to get roped into in the more urban areas when, we're all thin on the law enforcement front? I know out here in the Northwest and especially on the West Coast and California side, we're getting a lot of that. And the other states we've talked to, even the rural states, are having to adjunct in as well. Just curious how it is for you guys out there on that front.
No, the warden service really hasn't been impacted here in Maine that way.
Nice.
There's been some individual cases where game wardens on their own initiative have helped out with food distribution at some local schools to get food out to the community and things like that. But no, I think some parts of our the mental health infrastructure here in Maine have been certainly taxed, probably overloaded. But as far as us participating in a lot of that so far, we haven't seen a lot of it.
Nice.
Yeah,
you still get patrol in. Lost start right now.
Certainly game wardens are able to get some patrol time in, yeah.
Yeah, because we were talking to Randy Stark today as well, and a lot of this is affecting, and it could impact poaching later on. I was talking about Africa without the visitors being there, that without people being there and visibility, and the rangers don't get funded, and it could have massive impacts on populations and such. And boy, we have got the questions about, are you going to let go of hunting seasons and substance hunt? I've seen that all over the internet. It's crazy.
Free for all fears. Yeah.
I was at a local grocery store, this was even a month ago, and a guy was giving me the eyeballs, in the beginning of the aisle, and I knew the question was coming.
Here it comes. Right? Brace yourself.
He says, we're going to be able to hunt year round for a little while, just to, for sustenance for our families. And so we're getting those questions a lot. And obviously that's not the case, but we've not relaxed those laws. But it's on people's minds, and I think it makes some people, very few people, maybe consider those things, but it is different times for sure.
Yeah, I just posted a picture on the Warden's Watch Facebook page of New Jersey had a really good striped bass case, a bunch of striped bass. And then I talked to one of my former colleagues who's doing a detail in New Jersey at a grocery store, and he's like, you can't get fresh fish down here, Wayne. They could have made a ton of money off of those. So those are the types of things I can see that we really got to pay attention to. That type of resource violation, and they're going to claim subsistence hunting, but boy, they could make a ton of money off our resources at this point.
Yeah.
If this continues on at this level, I think we could run into some issues. But this is personally speaking, just watching the news, it's quite likely to think we're going to have a curve here and maybe be out of the woods relatively soon. But this is new and we don't know for sure. So if everybody relaxes and goes back to normal here in 2 months and it has a resurgence, then maybe the fall will be impacted somehow. But that's certainly beyond my pay grade.
Yeah. And that's the hard issue, guys. When we look at if this thing ebbs and flows, and the rural communities, it didn't get a surge when all the urban communities did through this last month. Latest data I'm getting from studying this stuff closely, and Wayne and I have gone over this a lot building up to this, is so many parts of the country not being impacted, and then rural states like Maine and out here in Montana where people have a second home, or they're semi-retired and they're coming from California, they're coming from DC, they're coming from Seattle, or they're coming from out of the country, doing travels and business. And next thing you know, there's this blow up, and certain rural communities are seeing that. We actually had that happen up here in Northwest Montana just this week. We had an out-of-state part-time resident of here came back from travels, brought COVID too, and now we have 7 more active cases in our local hospital. And for a small town of 3,000 people in the smallest county in the smallest state, that shakes people up a bit. And it just, and there's a lot of people that live here that aren't here yet. So looking at it from that perspective, and what you guys are out in the Northwest and fairly rural as well, I'm kind of concerned that this thing is going to ebb and flow, like you said, John, maybe into the fall, maybe beyond. So being prepared for the fall hunting seasons, when it's deer, when it's bear, when it's elk, when it's moose, for you guys out there, when, really the big, super popular seasons might impact those non-residents and even the residents in some states. And man, that's something we got to be prepared for and brace ourselves thinking ahead.
Yeah, that's very true. I think Maine is probably very similar to New Hampshire in that we have just a ton of second homes, especially along the coast. And I think people trying to flee the big cities, I know it firsthand.
Right.
A friend who's got rental properties that if anybody's got vacant rental properties listed, quite likely you're going to get calls from non-residents saying, hey, you rent that for 2 or 3 months. And it's happening right now. So it's we got a lot of people looking to come here, either to their second home or just to escape, whether it be New York City or Philadelphia or whatever it is.
Right.
So it's
Certainly
interesting.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time, John, and helping to fill that in from nationwide, from Washington to Maine. It's just, I think it's a good feeling for people to listen to and seeing the differences. And, the message is, hey, if you're going somewhere, check your own state, because it's fluid right now. Things are going to change. They might loosen up. They might get more strict depending on what we're going to see for that curve. So, but really, we appreciate your time and all your public information.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Anytime, Wayne, give me a shout, and appreciate you doing this.
Great. Sounds great.
Thanks, Wayne. It's good to meet you firsthand, and thanks for being on.
Yeah, you too, John. Thank you very much.